Hey folks, this is Matt once again, and let me move that a little bit. Welcome to the final review of the Critters films, being Critters 4. Now, right off the bat, I'll say it's not going to be a rant, because I pretty much like all these Critters films. Granted, maybe because I grew up with them. I will say, like I said in Critters 3 and 4 definitely got hurt by a lack in budget. Critters 4 even more so, I think Critters 4 definitely had even less of a budget than Critters 3. But I'll get into that. I should hate it, but I keep saying but a lot. I grew up with the film. It's nostalgia. Maybe that's why, so I'm more lenient on it. Although it's one of those things that if people rant on it, I can perfectly understand why people say it sucks. Like that, this is not one of those things, like, I love Cobra to death. I'll defend Cobra and say I don't think it sucks, this, and this. This, I understand why people say it sucks, but I can enjoy it. I think mainly because I don't mind some of the cast. I don't mind the fact that it takes place in space because, people are like, oh, well, they put it in space as if it's a big deal. And then they mention like Leprechaun and Jason Voorhees. And I'm like, they were in space in the first movie because they're aliens. It's like, I mean, I respect people's opinion. I don't mean it that way. But I don't understand the argument. They're aliens. They're aliens. They were in space in the first movie. They're in space in the first movie in the very opening. They were on a asteroid prison they were going to, and they flew a spaceship in space to Earth. They came to Earth because they're aliens. So what's the big deal of them being in space? They're aliens. So I didn't really understand that, oh my god, they went to space. I'm like, they're aliens. Of course they went to space. They're from space. Pinhead, that's another story. I can understand, like, why the fuck's he in space? Although I will admit, I love Jason X, and I do enjoy that more than this film. I wholeheartedly enjoy Jason X. I think it's just a fun time. It's a fun movie. We don't make Friday the 13th Part 10. Make it fun, and I had fun, so sue me. I think I did a review for it, so you can watch my review if you want to know more of it. But Critters 4, I'll say right now, it's not a rant because I liked it, but I understand why people hate it. Now, before I even get started, like I said before, this was filmed back-to-back with Critters 3. And I think I said a couple times I would not have minded Critters 5, but at the same time, I'm fine that it ended because this is one of those few horror film franchises that actually has an ending that doesn't leave room for sequel bait, that actually has continuity. Like, you have this film, and then it actually takes place years later, and then you actually have the same character played by Don Opper in all the films, and this, you hear about the events of the first two and see flashbacks of the first two. Like, these all actually connect, these four films. It's not like, from Friday the 13th Part 8 to Jason Goes to Hell, or Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5 to Freddy's Dead, and you're wondering, how the hell how does it link up? It's weird to say, but it's kind of true if you think about it. So that's kind of, watching all these films back to back, I appreciated that in a weird little way. I appreciate the fact that the Kyoto brothers actually did effects work on all these films, and they did a good job on the Critters. Although, again, the fact that they only got stuck with 2 of them in Critters 4 is a problem. And again, even if you're a fan, like, I'm a big fan of Critters 1 and 2. Wholeheartedly enjoy them. And, some people say, well, it's kind of the same movie again and again. I'm like, but that's most horror film franchises. Like, Nightmare on Elm Street films, it's about Freddy attacking you in your dreams. Or Jason going to kill you. It's just, each film, is it entertaining or is it not entertaining? And if it's not, then why? So it's like every Die Hard film, he's at the wrong place at the wrong time. Rocky films, it's okay, he's got to fight another guy. What's he going through in the story? So people are saying, well, it's the same thing. I'm like, the only time that's a problem for me is like the Hangover Part 2, where it almost is exactly a remake. Almost, I say. But either way, Critters 4, it was back to back. And this came out actually in 1992. And it's directed by Rupert Harvey, which this is the only film he directed. Really enough, he's an executive producer of Android from 1982, and you don't know a little bit later why I mentioned that specifically Android he executive produced, which also starred Don Keith, who played Charlie in all 4 of these films. He was a big producer. He produced Critters 1, for some reason not 2, at least it doesn't say so here. But he helped with the story and produced Critters 3 and 4, and then directed Part 4. So he's a bit in the Critters franchise, except Part 2. He was a line producer of the 1988 The Blob. He was a producer on Pump Up the Volume. Producer of Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, The Dream Child. Producer, chairman of the board, and Bones. So he's produced some clunkers. But Pump Up the Volume, they had the line producer on The Blob, I'm down for that. Producer of the original Critters. Executive producer on Android, I've heard my friend Mike talk how shitty that movie is, so I don't know if I want to see that, but the story, it's fairly simple. It takes place right after the 3rd film, Critters 3. At the end of Critters 3, Charlie, Don Keith, he had found pretty much the last 2 eggs of the Christ, and he gets a message from Terrence Mann, who comes back as Ugg, the bounty hunter from the first 2 films. And he says, Charlie, you can't destroy them because it'll limit the entire species, make them extinct. We're not allowed to do that, so we're going to send you this pod and you put the eggs in there. So Charlie does, but then he messes up and he gets trapped in there. And he gets trapped for quite a long time. I think around 50 years, give or take. Maybe more than 50 years. And so, like I said, the first about 37, was it? I had to write it down because that is a problem with the movie. The first 37 minutes go by, and this is like a 90-minute movie, and the first 37 minutes there are no critters in the movie. And it seems like with Critters 4, they tried to go back to the first film, where this film tried to do a slow burn, say like Alien, or although even the first Critters film wasn't even that much of a slow burn. But it seemed like they tried to make a little bit more of a serious film. Because the 3rd film, even maybe they thought the Critters 2 was, but I love Critters 2 more than this one. Critters 1 and 2 I love very much. 3 and 4, I can watch them. Like, I can put chips and soda and watch and be like, oh, okay, you know. Doesn't piss me off. But 37 minutes is a long time for the critters to come up. Basically, for those 37 minutes, you're introduced to the crew. And this is one of the reasons I don't mind this film is I don't mind the crew. I mean, the crew is pretty much about 5 people. Yeah, the 5 people are, you have this kid, Ethan, played by Paul Whithorn, who I don't mind, actually. I actually didn't mind him at all. I'm sure some people say, oh, you don't care about him. Well, I did. I didn't mind him. I thought he did a good job. Not even pretty decent. I thought he did a good job. He was fine. I had no problem with him. He didn't go on to do much. He was on an episode of the Flash TV series as Sean Allen in Flash Forward. He was in a film called Prayer of the Chameleon. And then this was the last film the guy did in 1992. That's too bad, because I thought he was fine, because he had a natural, acting thing to him. He did his job well. He wasn't annoying. He was soft-spoken. He didn't act like an asshole. He has his calendar where he's checking off the years, because he's waiting to get back to Earth. He's never been to Earth, and he wants to see his dad. So it's a little thing to throw in there, but I'm like, okay, that's cool. That's kind of nice. And again, he did a fine job. He's a fuck little better than Channing Tatum. And some of these actors I see prancing around with big careers. This guy can act the shit out of Channing Tatum's ass, in my opinion. I thought he did fine. I mean, it's nothing like awe-inspiring, but I thought Paul Whithorn, he did fine. He did fine for what he had to do. He has a couple pretty decent moments. Like, one of the two, he kills one of the two critters. He takes like this nozzle and freezes the shit out of it, and he says a really cool line: "Chill out, asshole." Like, he delivered that real well. Believe me, I've seen other films where people can't deliver those lines well, but I'm like, hey, it works. And he throws the motherfucking critter and smashes to pieces, kind of like Simon Phoenix and Demolition Man. Even though this is a little bit before Demolition Man. But freezes the motherfucking critter and throws it and breaks it in pieces. I thought, okay, he delivered a one-liner pretty decently, and nice death for a critter, okay. Other than the cast, you have this guy I didn't care for, but you're not supposed to. He's Anders Hof. He's the captain, pretty much an asshole. You have Angela Bassett, who I liked. She's the pilot. You have this guy, Eric DeRay, as Bernie. He's pretty much a guy who you tell he's got a little bit of problem with drugs, which leads to his demise later. And then you have Brad Dourif, the Paul Whithorn, the guy who played Ethan. Angela Bassett is the pilot, and definitely Brad Dourif are reasons why I can watch Critters 4 and enjoy it. Because I like, even though the first 37 minutes is a little way too long for the critters to show up, like the show, like, well, it shows the beginning, what happened to Charlie, then it gets to what these guys are doing. They find this pod and bringing it in, and you get to know a little bit about the characters. So, I mean, I guess in a lot of eyes, it fails, but it tries to develop the characters, so I appreciate it. But because I like Angela Bassett, and I like this Paul Whithorn, and Brad Dourif, I'm a big fan of Brad Dourif. I think he's a fantastic actor. I wish he was the star of the Halloween remakes. If he was the star of the Halloween remakes, maybe I would like those movies more, because it's sad that Brad Dourif never really got to play a lot of good guy roles where he doesn't die. Did you think about it? Child's Play, he plays a villain. Spontaneous Combustion, I was hoping he was going to be the hero, but no, he becomes a psycho at the end and dies. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, I think he dies. Body Parts, he's a good guy, but he dies. I know there's more. Steve Tooth Radio Ship, which I love. He's a good guy, but he dies. Like, he's like, he either keeps on being a bad guy like Child's Play or Death Machine and then dies, or he's a good guy. He keeps dying. Stop dying. But weirdly enough, the only time he's a good guy and doesn't die, not the only, but one of the only I can think of, is fucking Rob Zombie's Halloween, which I hate. 1 and 2 of that. That's sad. Damn it. But he's the one thing I can watch in those movies. Damn, that's sad. But he's a great presence to be in here. He's very funny. Like when he's showing, when Charlie gets in, he's showing this very antique gun that he has and how, you know, he's kept it in such preserve, and then Charlie just grabs it with the bullets, and Brad Dourif looks at him and throws it away like all these years of saving it for nothing. But it's sort of developing the characters, and again, I think a few of the problems with this film is the 37 minutes, it takes a little bit too long, but again, you get to know more about the characters. And yeah, I didn't mind some of them, Angela Bassett, Paul Whithorn, and Brad Dourif. So the captain, like, for example, there's a scene that Angela Bassett is taking a shower and you see some ass, whoop, and the captain asshole tries to fuck with her, but you think she's going to come on to him. Oh, we're going to have a sex scene in the shower, but she just smacks him right in the face. I'm like, alright, get her. Alright, Angela Bassett. And he goes off because he's humiliated. And he gets a call from, you see, Terrence Mann, who calls himself now Counselor Tetra, I believe, who wants the, what's in it, you know, we've lost this for a while, we want it, we'll pay you this price. And the captain says, oh, we'll think about it, okay, we'll do it. But he's being an asshole. He said, oh, come on, it's worth 10 times. And he opens it because he's an asshole. But he gets his comeuppance in a good way, because Charlie comes out and he realizes, oh my god, I'm in space. And then the Krites start stuff with babies. They come in and they kill the guy. And one like burrows right in his mouth. And pretty nasty death, you know, burrowing right into his mouth. So I thought, yeah, that's a good death scene. You know, I was waiting, you know, bound to happen that these guys, you know, get in someone's mouth. And basically, by that time, Ball Woodhorn joins with Charlie, starts asking what's going on, and they start going around searching for the Krites. They get locked in this garbage compactor, kind of like a garbage compactor type thing. That compactor, but it's going to blow out into space. They get out of there, and they meet up with Brad Dourif, Angela Bassett. At this time, the other guy, Bernie, he's off at the pharmacy because he's a druggie, which of course the critters go to, and he gets his ass killed. And then basically it's just the four of them, Don Opper, Paul Whithorn, Angela Bassett, and Brad Dourif, try and get out of the station. And they have like this computer that controls the ship that is a fucking idiot. It has a female voice. She's not an idiot because of that, but she won't listen to you unless you say the opposite thing. Like if you say don't open the door, then she'll open the door. And basically they're searching for it, and like they're able to get to the ship, and a critter starts fucking things up. And of course Charlie's trying to do the right thing, shoots one of the Krites, one of the two, falls off but fucks up the ship, so they have to wait there for help. And the kid, Paul Whithorn, he wants to take care of business. You know, he's upset that, you know, he's not going to be able to see his dad. And you don't have to go 50 minutes into it. You get enough of it. And I thought the guy did a fine job with it. The kid did a fine job with it. I keep saying kid, but I don't know how old he is. Teenager, at least. But he's trying to look for it. He has the gun, the revolver. I think it's a revolver. I can't remember the exact gun. But long story short, he's off looking, and you see Terrence Mann, Ugg, along with these pretty much stormtrooper types, come in. And you realize that Ugg is a very different person now. He's a very evil person. Wants to know where the Krites are. What they'll use them for, I don't know. Maybe weapons. Because they find out that the station is actually like it's a lab, a facility. And there's like a portion where, you know, they can like accelerate growth and want things to self-replicate or maybe reproduce by themselves, something like that. So, you know, maybe they'll use them for weapons or something like that. Which again kind of reminds you of Alien films in a way. Use them for weapons. Yeah, you can bring them down and wipe out the place. And of course they try to... Brad Dourif stands up for his friends, and Brad Dourif gets killed, which sucks. That's another complaint I have. I wish Brad Dourif would not get killed, but I guess it's to show that, okay, this is not the Ugg that we remember from the previous films, that these guys mean business, so someone had to die. So either had to be Angela Bassett. They're not going to kill Don Opper, because I think one of his brothers is a big producer on these films, I think. Barry Opper was the story and the producer. And I like that the kid, like, he reacts to his friend getting killed, like he sees it and he wishes he could have done something, so he kind of gets pissed and leads the stormtrooper type guys into where the other critters are, and they're sort of, you know, sort of making more of these things, and traps the stormtroopers in there so they get their ass eaten. And then in the beginning of the film, the first time we see this kid, we see him juggling, and that comes back into play, which I liked. He grabs like the final eggs and goes to Ugg and starts doing it. It's like, yeah, your men, you know, they kind of screwed up. But, you know, I forget what the hell the dialogue was. Like, and it's fun. He does a clever thing where he does it, but he has the pistol right in his back, that, you know, in his pants. So he gets over so that Angela Bassett can grab it. And he throws the last one, and Angela Bassett just beats the shit out of Ugg. And they try to get out of there. And again, I like this part where they, you know, I hate that Brad Dourif died, but I was able to deal with it more, mainly because there was respect for the dead, which you don't see all the time in movies. Like, you see the kid, you know, it's his friend who's died. He wants to go for it, and that's when he gets in the fight with the other Krite and, you know, freezes the shit out of it and says, "Chill out, asshole." Throws it, pretty much explodes into pieces. But I like the bit that he goes to Brad Dourif's body, and you know it's almost as if he's saying silent prayer to his friend and grabs his glasses, Brad Dourif's glasses, sort of a memento of his friend. It's a moment that might not mean anything, but I liked it. I appreciated it. You don't see that a lot in movies. And I think it made me ease off on Brad Dourif getting killed. It's not like they just, oh, fuck it, you died, bye. You know, it's like he cared about his friend. I liked that. And again, Paul Whithorn and Brad Dourif, I thought they both did a good job throughout the film. But then Terrence Mann has a gun to him, but then Don Opper has a gun on Ugg. And I know there's not much explanation as to why Ugg went evil, other than one line, which I guess satisfied me, because even Don Opper's character was asking before, oh, what, you got promotion, huh? Things change, Charlie. Things change. And so now Ugg's saying, no, Charlie, you're not going to do it. You can never do it. And then Charlie says, things change, Ugg. Things change. And is able to shoot Ugg to save this kid, this new friend he made. And he's like, people change too. And then they're able to get out of there, and the ship blows up, and basically they're pretty much heading back to Earth. No sequel bait ending. Now, I know it's 20-some minutes into the review of Critters 4, I know. But as to the film, what do I like about the film? Okay, there's a lot of issues with this film. This is why I don't blame people hating this. Number one, like I said countless times, it takes 37 minutes in for the critters to come in, let alone Don Opper. And I'm saying they must have been doing some of this. It says back to back, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were filming some of this stuff at the same time, because like Don Opper's character, he only pops in like one scene in the first half of Critters 3, then comes in like the third act. Here is about, other than the shots from the previous film, he doesn't come into about a third into the movie. So maybe that time he was shooting that, you know, who knows. But like I was saying, 37 minutes in is way too long. It doesn't bother me that they're in space. I mean, I think, okay, that makes sense, because if they're aliens, they're from space. But the problem is with that is, like I said before, this is the cheapest of the films. And remember I said way back in this review I mentioned Android, which this director has actually produced. Most of the sets and a lot of the special effects are from Android. Like pretty much all the special effects you see of the spaceship, like you see their spaceship and dock into the station, it's from Android. If you watch Critters 4, watch the trailer to Android. You'll see like the same special effects shots. So they took those effects shots, and like the very last scene where you see the ship going off, that's a fucking scene from Critters 2, I believe. An effect shot from Critters 2. So the shots they have in space of spaceships and space stations is from Android and Critters 2. And most of the sets are pretty much from that movie Android. Which is weird, they still have those sets from 1982. I mean, not all, but some of them you can tell. Because I saw Mike's review, and I'm like, this looks familiar. Plus, it's set on IMDb as well, so. So, this lack of budget was like, you're using some of the same sets, which isn't really much to go about. You have 2 critters at the most. I mean, you have one scene where you have a bunch of them popping up, but you pretty much got 2 critters throughout most of the film. When they come in at the 37-minute mark, the budget was dirty deeds done dirt cheap. That's pretty much it. 37 minutes in, and 2 critters at most, and special effects that you took just from Android and, you know, Critters 2. It's, you know, how can you not expect people to, you know, how do you expect people not to be mad about that, you know? And then, like, stuff that, again, doesn't make sense. Like, Ugg being a bad guy, Terrence Mann. You know, I mean, it didn't bother me that much. Maybe because, I don't know. I liked Terrence Mann in the previous films, but he wasn't my favorite character. But, I mean, I understand people being... The only way I could explain it was that he's an alien. He doesn't react like humans do. And it's been 50 years, and so that one line, things change. I guess I bought it. You know, in 50 years, people change. And he's an alien, so who knows what happened in those 50 years. It's like, you know, you have all these films where people start off as good, and then they end up not so good. You know, they start out, and that's like 5 years or 10 years. You know, who knows what happens in 50 years? You never know. Or maybe even more than 50 years, because I think it's more than 50 years actually. But so who knows? A lot of stuff could have happened. Maybe he got tortured. Maybe he got fucked up. Maybe he's become an asshole now. Sometimes people become assholes. That's just the sad truth. So I guess it didn't bother me. It would have bothered me if it was like a year from the events, but the fact that it's 50 years or so, they don't really explain. They just throw that line, things change, which is kind of lazy on the screenwriting. I think they could have given maybe a little bit more explanation, which, you know, would have appealed to people more. It didn't bother me, but I understand why it bothers people, because it's kind of like, what? He's a bad guy now? Because the writers on this film, who did the screenplay, Joseph Lyle and David Schow. Joseph Lyle, this is the only film he wrote. David Schow, thought he sounded familiar. This is the same guy who helped the screenplay for Critters 3, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. He did a screenplay for The Crow. Wow, he worked on the screenplay for The Crow right after Critters 4. And, wow. That's crazy. He's gone to work on that Masters of Horror and stuff like that. But wow, right after this film, he did The Crow. He wrote the script to The Crow. Wow. That's the difference. But, yeah, the fact that this is such a slow burn, that you only have 2 critters. Hell, really, Brad Dourif and Angela Bassett don't do much against the critters. Like, they don't really have a lot of screen time, those actors in that. And, you know, again, not much of a body count. Really, the critters kill those 2 people, the captain and the guy into the, you know, the pharmacy. And then you see him kill, well, you don't really see him, but they kill the stormtrooper guys, but you don't really see it. You just get the idea. And then Don Opper kills Ugg, or Counselor Tetra. So, as for the... I guess I should end it here, because it's almost 30-minute review on Critters 4. But I can watch the film because I don't mind the cast for the most part. Don Opper, Brad Dourif, Angela Bassett. I don't mind this guy, Paul Whithorn, who played the lead, Ethan. I thought he did fine. The death by, you know, hairball in the mouth, okay. I like the kid killing the critter, freezing him, and I like the one-liner he has. I like the fact it ended with not a downbeat ending, not a bullshit ending, or not a sequel bait ending. I understood the fact they're trying to be more of a slow-paced film. I guess trying to make it a scary movie, but it doesn't really work. I like the idea that it takes place in space. I think that would have been a decent enough idea, but you could tell they didn't have the budget. If they're using sets from another movie, for the most part, and effects from another movie, and they only have, at the most part, 2 critters for the most part of the film, and they don't come in... You know budget was an issue, and this is probably the lowest budget. If it isn't, then someone fucked up. But I can watch it as a time waster. It's a Critters film. I grew up with it. I don't mind the cast too much. And at best it's a time waster, but I'm sure a lot of people will not like this film, and it's understandable. But the only time it doesn't understand, oh, they're in space. Well, they're aliens. But other than that, for its slow pace, the fact it's only 2 critters... I know there's some parts in the script I think they could have worked on more. Like, I was fine with Terrence Mann being the bad guy because I'm like, okay, 50 years, things change. That's sad but true. But maybe a little bit more so people would understand that part more. They do less of the goofy humor, at least for the critters. You see the critters, other than one getting a blast and his hair fucked up, I just distinguish the two. There's really not much goofy stuff that they do. So it's definitely the least, it's not as goofy as Critters 3, or you could say even Critters 2. It tries to be more of a serious film, but it doesn't really work with the slow burn. But I appreciate the effort. I guess the best way to put it is, it's a time waster for me. And it ended it, and it didn't make me that mad. It didn't piss me off. I'm like, okay, I watched this as a kid. I didn't watch it as a time waster, and I think if I hated the cast, it would have been a different story, but I just love seeing Brad Dourif do his thing acting-wise. I liked Angela Bassett, and I like this kid, Paul Whithorn. I think if they had a bigger budget and a faster pace and one more draft of the script would have helped, but that wasn't the case. So, is it my least favorite of the series? Critters 3 and 4, like Critters 3 I think had more of a budget, because you see more critters in there. Don Opper, he has a little bit more to do at the third act, like he's actually doing a little bit more stuff. But in this one, I like the space concept more than just an apartment building. I like the Brad Dourif and Angela Bassett and Paul Whithorn. I like those three more than... I don't mind the characters in Critters 3, but I like those three more in Critters 4 as opposed to Critters 3. So it's kind of like, I see some good, I see some bad. Critters 3 probably goes at a faster pace, but Critters 4... And Critters 4 doesn't, but Critters 4 is less goofy, which I appreciate a little bit more than the little bit more goofiness Critters. So it's kind of... I still like them. So... But I will say, I definitely like Critters 1 and 2 more, so... I still would like to see, you know, a documentary on these films. Like, go through all 4 films. Talk to Don Opper and this producer, Rupert Harvey. Like, what's the explanation between Critters 3 and 4? Like, I'm sure it's because Critters 1 and 2, they did decent business at the box office, but they probably made more money on videotape. So, like, hey, just make this straight to video. Like, why do they decide to do it? Like, if you think about it, Critters 3 and 4, they could have just taken the budgets for those 2 films, put them together, and make a really solid Critters film that stood up to Critters 1 and 2. Because although I can watch Critters 3 and 4, they're definitely not as good as Critters 1 and 2. So if they took the budgets between these 2 films and put them together, maybe you could have made a film that would have stood along with the first 2. So, like a worthy trilogy in a way. But it is what it is, and I can watch these as time wasters. But if you ask me what I prefer, it's the first 2. But anyway, I know it's a long review, but it's the final review of the Critters films. Critters 4. They're in space. They're aliens. It makes sense. Either way, though, thanks for watching. Take care, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.